My name is Runa. I'm 32 years old, and I never thought my own family would exclude me from Christmas. I always tried to make holidays special, despite our strange relationship, especially with my mother. When she called saying they needed a break from Christmas this year, I understood, or at least I thought I did, until social media revealed the truth. The photos showed everything I was missing. So I bought my dad his dream truck. What happened next changed everything forever. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from, and hit that like and subscribe button if family drama is something you've experienced too. Growing up in Portland, our family never had much. My parents worked multiple jobs just to keep our modest three-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood. Mom worked as a receptionist at a dental office, while Dad did maintenance work for the city. They struggled, but they always made sure my sister Megan and I had what we needed. From an early age, I was the serious one. I studied hard, got straight A's, and spent weekends in the library rather than at parties. My parents never pushed me academically. That drive came from within. By 16, I knew I wanted to work in technology, fascinated by how computers could solve complex problems. Megan, 4 years younger than me, was completely different. Where I was focused, she was spontaneous. Where I planned, she lived in the moment. And while I had to fight for every bit of attention, Megan effortlessly became the center of our family, especially for our mother. Rona takes care of herself, Mom would often say, as if my independence was a reason to focus all her nurturing energy on my sister instead. College was tough financially. While I earned a partial scholarship to Washington State University, it only covered about half my tuition. I worked 20 to 30 hours weekly at the campus computer lab and took out loans for the rest. During those years, I came home only for major holidays, watching as the dynamic with my family shifted further. Every Christmas break, I noticed how my mother doted on Megan. When I showed up with Dean's List achievements, Mom would nod politely before turning to gush over Megan getting cast in a small role in a local theater production. Dad would give me a proud smile and a quick side hug, but he never challenged the imbalance. After graduation, I landed a job at a growing tech company in Seattle. Those first few years were brutal, with 80-hour work weeks, but they paid off. By 28, I was leading my own team. By 30, I had paid off my student loans and bought my first condo. Megan, meanwhile, bounced between careers. She tried acting, then real estate, then interior design, never sticking with anything longer than 18 months. Each time she pivoted, our mother supported her enthusiastically. She just hasn't found her passion yet, Mom would explain, while quietly dismissing my career achievements as just being good with computers. Holiday gatherings became increasingly strained as years passed. I would arrive with carefully selected gifts and a determination to connect, only to spend most visits feeling like an outsider in my own family. Dad and I would escape to the garage where he would show me his latest home repair projects while we shared beers and the kind of comfortable silence that comes from similar personalities. Last Christmas was particularly difficult. Megan brought her new boyfriend, Paul, a smooth-talking real estate investor she had been dating for only 2 months. Paul dominated every conversation with stories about his business deals and plans to flip houses in up-and-coming neighborhoods. Something about him seemed off to me, especially when he vaguely answered questions about his background. When I privately asked Megan how they had met, she got defensive. Not everyone needs to run background checks on people they date, Runa. Some of us trust our instincts. That night, Mom pulled me aside and accused me of being jealous of Megan's relationship. You worked too much to meet someone. Maybe if you were more open, like your sister, you'd have a Paul of your own. I left the next morning instead of staying the planned 3 days, making up an excuse about work. Dad walked me to my car, apologizing without really saying what for. Your mother just wants everyone to be happy, he said, which was his standard response whenever Mom did something hurtful. Throughout the next year, I tried to maintain connections through regular calls and visits, though each interaction left me feeling more distant from them. I sent gifts for birthdays and helped Dad research treatment options when he developed some minor heart problems. I even offered to help with their mortgage when they mentioned financial concerns, but Mom refused, saying they didn't need charity. The one bright spot was my career. 3 months ago, I received a major promotion to senior engineering director, nearly doubling my salary. For the first time, I felt truly financially secure. I could travel, invest, and even help my parents significantly if they would let me. The promotion came with increased responsibilities, but also the respect I had always worked for. As the holidays approached, I began planning how I might use my new position to create a special Christmas. Perhaps I could rent a cabin in the mountains for the whole family, or surprise my parents with a weekend getaway after our traditional celebration. Despite everything, I still wanted us to be close. I still believed we could heal whatever invisible rift had formed over the years. I had no idea how completely that hope would be shattered. 3 weeks before Christmas, I was at Pacific Place Mall in downtown Seattle shopping for holiday gifts. The decorations were elaborate that year, with enormous crystalline snowflakes hanging from the ceiling and a 30-foot tree in the central court. Holiday music played through the speakers, and despite the crowds, I felt light and festive. I had just found a beautiful leather wallet for Dad when my phone rang. Seeing Mom's name on the screen gave me a momentary pause. She rarely called unprompted, usually waiting for me to check in first. Something about the timing felt off, but I pushed my unease aside and answered cheerfully. "Hi, Mom. I was just picking up some Christmas presents. I found this amazing wallet for Dad that looks like the one Grandpa used to have." There was a brief silence before she responded, her voice oddly formal. "About Christmas, Runa. Dad and I have been talking, and we think we should take a break from all the holiday stress this year." I stopped walking, moving to the side of the busy corridor as shoppers streamed past me. "A break? What do you mean?" "Just a quiet year. No big dinner, no presents, no decorations. Just simple. With your father's heart condition, we need to keep things calm." My mind raced to process this information. Dad's heart condition was minor, controlled with medication. His doctor had explicitly said there were no activity restrictions needed. Still, I wanted to be supportive. "I understand. If you want to keep it low-key, I could help cook or we could order in, whatever makes it easier." "That's not necessary," Mom replied quickly. "Actually, we were thinking just immediate family this year. Very intimate." "But I am immediate family," I said, confusion growing. "Of course you are, honey. I meant just us and Megan and Paul, of course, since they're so serious now." The exclusion was becoming clearer, but I still offered solutions. I could come for just Christmas Eve or even the day after if that works better. "Runa, you're not understanding," Mom said, her voice taking on the edge it always did when I failed to immediately accept her decisions. "We need a complete break this year. Megan is going through some changes with Paul and they need family support. My father and I can't handle a big production." "I'm not asking for a production," I said, my voice dropping as a lump formed in my throat. "I just want to see you all for Christmas." "We also have financial concerns," she added, ignoring my response. "Not everyone has a fancy tech job. Some of us need to be careful with money right now." This was a familiar tactic, bringing up my career as if my success was something to apologize for. I had offered financial help numerous times, always to be rejected, as if the offer itself was offensive. "I could help with that," I said quietly. "You know I would be happy to." "We don't need your charity," she snapped.
then immediately softened her tone. "We just need a quiet year, Runa. You understand, right? You've always been so independent. You'll be fine." There it was again, my independence used as justification for exclusion. I stood there in the middle of holiday shoppers, feeling suddenly very alone. "Sure," I finally said. "I understand." "Wonderful," Mom replied, sounding relieved. "We'll call you on Christmas Day. Of course. Maybe we can plan something for next year."
After we hung up, I stood motionless. The festive atmosphere around me now felt like a cruel joke. The wallet I had picked out for Dad sat heavy in my hand. I returned it to the shelf and left the mall. My shopping mood completely evaporated. Back in my condo, I poured a glass of wine and tried to process what had happened. Part of me felt hurt and rejected, but another part felt an odd sense of relief. Christmas with my family had become increasingly stressful over the years. Maybe a break would be good for all of us. I called my friend Sophia that evening and explained the situation. "That sounds weird," she said bluntly. "They're excluding just you, not cousins or other relatives?" "Apparently, it's just immediate family this year," I replied, repeating my mother's words. "But you are immediate family," Sophia pointed out, echoing my own thoughts. Something doesn't add up. Despite Sophia's suspicions, I decided to accept the situation. If my family needed space, I would give it to them. I began researching alternative Christmas plans, eventually booking a solo trip to Hawaii, departing December 26th. I would spend Christmas Day volunteering at a local shelter, then fly out for a week of sun and relaxation. I even found myself looking forward to my new plans. No tension, no walking on eggshells, no feeling like an unwelcome guest. Just warmth, beauty, and the opportunity to help others before treating myself to a real vacation. In the weeks that followed, I sent my family simple holiday cards rather than gifts. Dad called to thank me for my card, sounding subdued and quickly passing the phone to Mom when I asked about his health. Our conversation was brief and surface level. Megan didn't acknowledge her card at all. As Christmas approached, I threw myself into work, finalizing projects before the holiday break. I bought supplies for the shelter and packed for Hawaii. I told myself repeatedly that this was fine, that I was fine. Some years, holidays just don't work out as planned. Next year would be different. I had no idea just how different things would become, or that the truth was far more painful than I had imagined. The week after Christmas passed in a blur of Hawaiian sunshine. I hiked volcanic trails, swam in turquoise waters, and for the first time in years, didn't check my work email once. The distance from Seattle and my family situation gave me perspective. Maybe the separation was the reset we all needed. I returned to work on January 2nd, feeling refreshed and optimistic. My team welcomed me back with stories from their own holiday breaks, and I shared carefully edited highlights from my trip, omitting the reason I had gone in the first place. My coworker Jackson stopped by my office around lunchtime carrying his laptop. "Got to show you something," he said with a grin. "My niece got a puppy for Christmas, and it's the cutest thing you've ever seen." I smiled as he opened his computer and pulled up his family photos. Jackson scrolled through images of Christmas morning at his sister's house, his niece unwrapping a small golden retriever puppy with a red bow around its neck. "That's adorable," I agreed, as he continued scrolling through his holiday album. Then he switched to showing me a video call they'd had with other relatives. "We did this big family Zoom with everyone who couldn't make it in person," he explained. As he played the recording, something in the background of one of the video participants caught my eye. It was a social media feed on someone's computer screen, and I could have sworn I saw my cousin Lorna's profile picture. "Can you go back a second?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Jackson rewound the video slightly, and there it was.
Lorna's profile was indeed visible in the background, and she had posted what looked like a family Christmas photo. My family Christmas photo. "Thanks for showing me," I said quickly. "That puppy is going to bring so much joy. I need to finish something before our meeting, though." As soon as Jackson left, I pulled up my own social media accounts. I rarely check them, preferring phone calls or texts to keep up with friends. I hadn't logged into Facebook for at least 2 weeks. Lorna had indeed posted several photos from what appeared to be Christmas at my parents' house. The first showed their living room decorated with the same ornaments and lights they had used for years. The tree I had helped my father select last year stood in the corner, adorned with the handmade ornaments my sister and I had created as children. My hands shook slightly. As I clicked through more photos, there was my mother in her Christmas apron, the one she wore only for special occasions, standing proudly next to a perfectly roasted turkey. My father carving said turkey at the dining table, which had been extended to accommodate what looked like at least 12 people. And there was Megan sitting on Paul's lap, both wearing matching Christmas sweaters. Beside them sat two young girls, maybe 7 and 9 years old, also in matching outfits. I stared at these children, confusion growing. Paul never mentioned having children. Megan never mentioned them either. Who were these girls? More relatives appeared in other photos. My Aunt Linda and Uncle Greg, cousins Alden and Lorna. Everyone smiling, exchanging gifts, clearly enjoying a full family Christmas celebration. The very celebration I had been told was not happening.
I closed my office door and continued my investigation. Lorna had tagged everyone in the photos, including Paul. I clicked due to his profile, which I had never viewed before. His recent posts included several pictures from the same gathering, with captions like, "Best Christmas with my girls and extended family," and "So grateful Megan's family has welcomed us so completely." In one photo, he referred to the two girls as "my daughters Lily and Emma, finally meeting their future grandparents." My breathing became shallow as the pieces clicked into place. Not only had my family lied about canceling Christmas, but they had hosted a full holiday gathering that included extended family and Paul's apparent daughters that no one had ever mentioned to me. I texted Sophia immediately. "Can you call me as soon as possible? Something happened." Within minutes, my phone rang. "What's going on?" Sophia asked, concern evident in her voice. "They lied," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "They didn't cancel Christmas. They just didn't want me there." I explained what I had discovered, sending her links to the photos as we spoke. "Oh my God, Runa! This is beyond messed up. Have you called them?" "Not yet," I admitted. "I'm still trying to process it. And there are these two girls with Paul and Megan. He's calling them his daughters, but Megan never mentioned him having kids. Something feels off about the whole situation." "Do you want me to come over after work?" Sophia offered. "You shouldn't be alone with this." I thanked her but declined. I needed time to think, to understand what this meant and what, if anything, I should do about it. Throughout the day, I continued finding more evidence. Posts from other relatives confirmed the gathering had been planned weeks in advance. There were even photos of shopping trips for decorations, dated before my mother's call about canceling Christmas. That evening in my apartment, I finally broke down. The carefully constructed narrative of our family problems being temporary, of there being hope for repair, shattered completely. They hadn't merely excluded me, they had created an elaborate lie to do so. The next day, I worked from home, unable to face my colleagues. I sent Lorna a direct message, simply asking about the Christmas photos. Her response was telling. "Oh no, did your mom not tell you about the change of plans? That's terrible. I assumed you couldn't make it because of work or something." After some awkward back and forth, Lorna admitted what I already knew.
There had never been a plan to cancel Christmas. My mother had organized the usual family gathering weeks in advance, specifically requesting that no one mention it to me. "I think Megan convinced your parents you wouldn't want to come," Lorna wrote. "Something about you being judgmental about her relationship with Paul. I shouldn't be telling you this, but it felt wrong when I saw the photos and realized you weren't there." I thanked Lorna for her honesty and continued my painful investigation. Through mutual acquaintances and social media, I learned more about Paul's situation. The girls in the photos weren't actually his daughters. They belonged to an ex-girlfriend, a woman he had dated for less than a year. He had no legal custody or formal relationship with them, yet was presenting them as his children to my family. When I mentioned this finding to Sophia during our phone call that night, she was outraged. "So let me get this straight. Your sister's boyfriend of 10 months? Brought children that aren't even his to a family Christmas while your own family lied to keep you away? What kind of twisted logic is that?" I had no answer. All I knew was that this was part of a pattern, one where I was always on the outside looking in. My sisters spun stories, my mother believed them, and my father went along with whatever would keep the peace. For days, I considered confronting them directly. I drafted texts, emails, even rehearsed phone calls. But every approach felt like it would lead to the same result: denials, justifications, and ultimately me being painted as the unreasonable one for being hurt. This time, I decided would be different. This time, I would respond in a way they couldn't ignore or dismiss. And I knew exactly what would speak loudest to my father, the parent I had always felt most connected to, despite his inability to stand up for me.
The discovery left me in a state of emotional freefall. That first night, after seeing all the evidence, I sat alone in my apartment, struggling to breathe through the betrayal. The string lights I had hung around my living room windows, my own small attempt at holiday cheer, now seemed to mock me. I poured myself a glass of wine, then another, trying to numb the sharp edges of my pain. My phone kept lighting up with work emails, but I couldn't bring myself to care about project deadlines or client meetings, not when my entire understanding of my family had just imploded. Around midnight, I called Sophia, not caring about the late hour. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Runa, what's wrong?" "Everything," I whispered. "Everything is wrong." To her credit, Sophia listened without interruption as I detailed everything I had discovered. The photos, the planned deception, the mysterious children, all of it. "I always knew there were problems," I told her, "but this is different. This was coordinated. They all agreed I shouldn't be there. My own parents." "This isn't about you," Sophia said firmly. "This is about them and whatever dysfunctional dynamic they've created. No healthy family excludes someone like this." "Then why does it feel like it's my fault?" I asked, my voice small. "What did I do that was so terrible?" "Nothing," she insisted. "Absolutely nothing. Some families just can't handle having a member who doesn't fit their narrative. Your success threatens them somehow." The next morning, fighting a wine headache and emotional exhaustion, I began a more methodical investigation. I needed to understand the full scope of the deception. I reached out to my cousin Lorna again, asking for a phone call rather than messages. Initially reluctant, she finally agreed. "I feel terrible about this whole situation," Lorna said when we connected. "I assumed you knew and had chosen not to come." "Tell me everything," I requested. "When was this planned? What did they tell everyone about my absence?" Lorna sighed heavily. "The plan started right after Thanksgiving. Your mom called everyone saying she was hosting the usual Christmas, but then about 2 weeks before, she called again saying not to mention it to you. She said you were too busy with work and it would just make you feel bad to know you were missing out." "Did that make sense to you?" I asked.
That they would protect my feelings by completely excluding me? Not really, Lorna admitted, but your mom was insistent. Then Megan told everyone you'd been really judgmental about Paul and his situation with the girls, that you'd said some harsh things. What girls? What situation? I pressed. I never even knew he had children in his life. Lorna seemed genuinely surprised. You didn't know Paul's ex-girlfriend has 2 daughters? He dated the mom for like 10 months or something, but he stayed close with the girls after they broke up. He brings them around sometimes, calls them his daughters. Megan said you knew and had made some comments about it being inappropriate. The revelation stunned me. Not only had I never known about these children, but I had been accused of criticizing a situation I was completely unaware of. Lorna, I never knew any of this. I haven't even spoken to Megan about Paul since last Christmas, and he never mentioned having kids then. The silence on the line was telling. Oh God, Lorna finally said. This is even worse than I thought. After talking with Lorna, I reached out to other family members who had attended. Most avoided my calls, but my Uncle Greg eventually spoke with me briefly, confirming that everyone had been told I was aware of the gathering, but chose not to attend due to work commitments. Your mother said you were too career-focused to make time for family these days, he told me, discomfort evident in his voice. I should have called you directly. I'm sorry, Runa. I spent hours scrolling through social media, piecing together the timeline. Paul had only introduced the girls to my family in November, based on the earliest photos I could find. Yet by Christmas, they were being presented as his daughters and integrated into our family traditions. Through a mutual connection at my gem, who knew Paul's ex, I learned more troubling details. The girl's mother had full custody, and Paul had no legal relationship with them whatsoever. He only saw them occasionally when their mother permitted it, usually for photo opportunities he'd to post online. He uses those kids as props, my gym acquaintance told me. Their mom is getting really uncomfortable with how he portrays his relationship with them on social media. She's considering legal action to make him stop posting about them. The picture becoming clearer was deeply disturbing. Paul was presenting a false image of himself as a devoted father figure. Megan was supporting this narrative, perhaps even believing it herself. And my parents, especially my mother, had embraced this artificial family unit while excluding their actual daughter. When I shared these discoveries with Sophia during our daily calls, she became increasingly concerned. Runa, this isn't normal family drama, she emphasized. This is pathological behavior. Paul is lying about his relationship with these children. Megan is either complicit or deluded, and your parents chose a virtual stranger with a fabricated family over their own daughter. What do I even do with this? I asked her. Confronting them directly will just lead to more lies and gaslighting. Maybe it's time to accept that you can't fix this, Sophia suggested gently. Some family dynamics are too broken. You might need to create distance for your own well-being. Her words resonated with a truth I had been avoiding for years. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding or a one-time hurt. This was the culmination of a lifetime of being the odd one out, the one who never quite fit the family narrative. That night, I pulled out old family photo albums, searching for clues I might have missed. In photo after photo, I noticed the same pattern. Megan, always sensual, always touching our mother. Me, always slightly apart, connected more often to our father, when connected to anyone else. One Christmas photo from when I was 16 caught my attention. In it, I stood proudly holding an academic award while everyone focused on 12-year-old Megan opening a gift in the foreground. My accomplishment literally faded into the background, unacknowledged. It was in that moment of clarity that I made my decision. No more trying to earn my way into the inner circle of my own family. No more accepting scraps of attention and affection. This time I would respond not with pleas for inclusion or understanding, but with a grand gesture that couldn't be ignored or minimized. And I knew exactly what form that gesture would take. For as long as I could remember, my father had dreamed of owning a Ford F-150 truck. He would stop in parking lots to admire them, pick up brochures at dealerships, and talk about someday getting one for himself. But that someday never came.
Dad drove a succession of used, unreliable vehicles throughout my childhood. When one broke down beyond repair, he would buy another budget option, always prioritizing family expenses over his own desires. His current vehicle was a 15-year-old Chevrolet with nearly 200,000 miles on it, rusting in spots and requiring frequent repairs. As I considered how to respond to my family's betrayal, I remembered a conversation from last summer. Dad and I had been in his garage, and he mentioned that his car was having transmission problems again. Maybe it's time to look at something more reliable, I had suggested. Someday, he replied with his usual patient smile, when all the bills are paid. The bills would never all be paid. There would always be another reason to put his dreams on hold. But I had the means to change that now. The morning after my photo album revelation, I began researching trucks. I wanted this to be perfect, a statement that couldn't be misinterpreted or dismissed. The latest Ford F-150 models came with various trim packages and options. I studied them all, considering what features my father would appreciate most. By lunchtime, I had selected the XLT model and the dark blue he had always admired in display models, but considered too extravagant for himself. I added the towing package, knowing he occasionally helped friends move large items, and the cold weather package for the harsh Portland winters. That afternoon, I called the largest Ford dealership in Portland and spoke with their sales manager. I explained what I wanted and why. "This is quite a gift," the manager commented. "We don't see many vehicles purchased outright very often." "It needs to be perfect," I insisted, "and I want to finalize everything this week." The financial aspect was significant, but manageable. My recent promotion had come with stock options and a substantial salary increase. The truck's total cost came to $29,600, an amount that would have been unthinkable a year ago, but was now within my means. As I transferred the funds and signed the digital paperwork, I experienced conflicting emotions. Was this a healthy response to being hurt? Was I using money to buy my way into my family's affections? Or was this simply the most direct way to communicate that I was done being the outsider? Sophia expressed concerns when I told her my plan. "That's a lot of money to spend on making a point, Runa." "It's not just about making a point. Dad has wanted this truck for decades. He deserves to have something just for himself for once. Whether or not we repair our relationship, I want him to have this." The dealership arranged for the truck to be ready by the weekend. On Saturday morning, I flew to Portland and took a taxi directly to the dealership. The sales manager greeted me personally, leading me to where the truck sat gleaming under the showroom lights. It was beautiful, exactly as I had specified. The dark blue paint had a depth to it that shifted in the light, and the interior had the leather seats my father had always admired in display models, but considered too extravagant for himself. "Would you like to test drive it?" the manager offered. I shook my head. No need. It's not for me. After completing the final paperwork and arranging for insurance, I asked the manager to take a video of me beside the truck. He seemed puzzled, but agreed. "Just a simple shot," I instructed. "Nothing fancy." Standing beside the driver's door, I spoke directly to the camera. My message was brief and carefully worded. "Hi, Dad. Since we couldn't spend Christmas together, I wanted to give you something you've always wanted but never bought for yourself. This Ford F-150 is yours. The dealership has all the paperwork ready. All you need to do is come pick it up. I love you." I deliberately kept my tone neutral, not accusatory or emotional. This wasn't about guilt or manipulation. It was about truth presented in a way that couldn't be rewritten or denied. After reviewing the video, I sent it to my father's phone with no additional text. Then I took a taxi to my hotel,
checked in, and waited. The response was immediate. Within minutes, my phone began ringing. First my father, then my mother, then my sister. I let all the calls go to voicemail. Text messages followed, ranging from confused to angry to pleading. Dad: Runa, what is this? Call me right now. Mom: What are you thinking? We need to talk immediately. Megan: OMG, what are you trying to prove? Mom is freaking out. I read each message, but responded to none. For once, they wouldn't control the narrative. For once, they would have to contend with my reality rather than the other way around. As the hours passed, the messages became more frantic. My mother's tone shifted from angry to concerned. We're worried about you. This isn't like you. Please call us. My father's messages remained simple and direct. I need to speak with you, please. Around 6:30 that evening, I ordered room service dinner and tried to distract myself with the movie. The decision not to engage was harder than I had anticipated. Years of conditioning had taught me to respond immediately to family demands, to explain myself, to apologize even when I had done nothing wrong. But this time was different. This time, I would wait. At precisely 7:45, 90 minutes after I had sent the video, there was a knock at my hotel room door. The knocking was firm and insistent. I muted the television and moved to the door, heart pounding. I hadn't shared my location with anyone, not even Sophia. Looking through the peephole, I saw my father standing in the hallway, his expression a mixture of confusion and concern. For a moment, I considered not answering. I had imagined this confrontation would happen on my terms, perhaps after I had returned to Seattle. But now that he was here, I knew I had to face him. I opened the door slowly. Dad looked older than he had at our last meeting 6 months ago. The lines around his eyes had deepened, and his shoulders seemed to carry an invisible weight. He wore his usual weekend outfit, jeans and a flannel shirt, hands thrust deep in his pockets. "How did you find me?" I asked, remaining in the doorway. "Called every hotel near the dealership until I found one with you registered. Can I come in?" I stepped aside, allowing him into the room. He entered cautiously, as if entering unfamiliar territory rather than his daughter's space. "The truck," he began, then stopped, seeming unsure how to continue. "It's yours," I said simply, no strings attached. He shook his head. "Runa, I can't accept something like that. It's too much." "Why not? I can afford it." "That's not the point," he insisted. "What is this about? The video, the truck, coming to Portland without telling us you were here?" I gestured for him to sit in one of the room's armchairs while I perched on the edge of the bed. The distance between us felt both physical and symbolic. "I saw the Christmas photos," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "All of them. The family gathering you said was canceled, the turkey Mom cooked, the presents under the tree, Megan and Paul, his supposed daughters. I saw it all." Dad's face paled. He looked down at his hands, unable to meet my eyes. "Runa, it's complicated." "Then uncomplicate it for me," I challenged. "Explain to me why my entire family lied to exclude me from Christmas." The silence stretched between us, heavy with decades of unspoken truths. When he finally looked up, I saw something break in his expression. "I have no excuse," he admitted, his voice cracking. "None that would make any sense or make this right." His honesty, unexpected and raw, caught me off guard. I had prepared for denials, for justifications, for the usual tactics that minimize my feelings. I hadn't prepared for accountability. Your mother and Megan, they convinced me it was for the best, that you were too busy, that you and Megan needed space from each other, that Paul was sensitive about his situation with the girls and your perceived judgment of it. It all sounded reasonable when they explained it. I never even knew about those girls. How could I have judged a situation I knew nothing about? Dad ran a hand over his face. I think I knew that. Deep down, I knew something was wrong with the whole story, but it was easier to go along with it than to challenge them. It's always been easier. His admission hung in the air between us. For the first time, he was acknowledging the pattern that had shaped our family dynamic for as long as I can remember. Do you know what hurts the most? Not that I missed Christmas. Not even that you all lied. It's that none of you even missed me. You had this perfect family holiday, and my absence didn't matter at all. That's not true, he protested, leaning forward. I missed you every minute. I kept looking at the door, half expecting you to show up anyway. Nothing felt right without you there. But you didn't call, I pointed out. You didn't text to say you missed me. You went along with it, all. I did, he acknowledged, shoulders slumping. And I have no defense for that, none at all. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of truth filling the space between us. Outside, the Portland rain began to fall, pattering against the window in a gentle rhythm. And Paul's daughters, I finally asked, what is that situation exactly? Dad sighed heavily. They're not his daughters, not legally, not biologically. He dated their mother briefly. After they broke up, he kept seeing the girls occasionally. He presents it as if he has some sort of custody arrangement, but from what I can tell, he just sees them when their mother allows it, which is becoming less frequent. And everyone is okay with this deception? Your mother and Megan buy into it completely. They see what they want to see, a ready-made family unit. I've had my doubts, but it was easier. I finished for him. He nodded, shame evident in his expression. I've been going along for too long, with too many things.
The raw honesty of the moment created an opening I had never expected. For the first time, my father was acknowledging his role in the family dynamics that had hurt me for so long. The truck, he said suddenly, changing direction. I can't accept it. Why not? I asked again. Because it feels like a goodbye gift, he admitted. Like you're buying your way out of our family, and I don't want to lose you, even though I've given you every reason to walk away. His perception surprised me. The truck had been meant as a statement, a power move of sorts, but not as a farewell. At least, I hadn't consciously intended it that way. It's not a goodbye, I said softly, but things can't continue as they've been. I deserve better, Dad. I always have. He nodded, tears forming in his eyes. Yes, you have. You've always deserved better than what we gave you. As the rain intensified outside, we began a conversation that was decades overdue. My father spoke of his own childhood, of learning to keep peace at all costs. I shared the accumulation of hurts I had buried over the years, the constant feeling of being an outsider in my own family. For the first time, we spoke not as father and daughter, but as two adults confronting painful truths together. About the truck, Dad said as our conversation wound down, I have a proposal. I raised an eyebrow, waiting. I'll accept it on one condition, that you come with me to the dealership tomorrow and we pick it out together. I want this to be something we share, not something that divides us further. His suggestion caught me by surprise.
The truck I had already purchased was sitting at the dealership, paid for and ready, but I understood what he was really asking for, a new beginning rather than a grand gesture. Okay, I agreed. We'll go together. The next morning, I met my father for breakfast at a diner near the hotel. The awkwardness of the previous night had been replaced by a tentative warmth, like the first rays of sun after a storm. At the dealership, I explained the situation to the understanding sales manager. We arranged to return the truck I had purchased and start fresh, selecting a new one together. Dad chose the same model but in a different color, a deep forest green that hadn't been my first choice but clearly meant something to him. Your grandfather's truck was this color, he explained as we walked around the vehicle, the one he taught me to drive in. These were the kinds of family stories I'd missed, the connections that had gone unshared in our strained relationship. We spent the day completing the new purchase and taking the truck for its first drive. Dad insisted on paying for a portion himself, a small amount that wouldn't cause financial strain but allowed him to maintain his dignity. It needs to be partly from me, otherwise it's not really mine. I understood. This was about more than a vehicle. It was about establishing a new type of relationship based on mutual respect rather than old patterns. That evening, over dinner, we discussed the next difficult step, confronting my mother and sister. They won't take this well, Dad warned. My mother has always had a certain view of family roles, and your sister has always been the center of that view. I know, I finished, but I can't pretend anymore, not even to keep the peace. He nodded solemnly. I'll be there this time, really be there. 3 days later, I returned to Seattle with plans for my parents to visit the following weekend. When they arrived, my mother was visibly uncomfortable in my space, touching objects as if they might contaminate her, making comments about my extravagant lifestyle. Dad arrived in his new truck, which prompted immediate questions from my mother. We need to talk, I said once we were all seated in my living room. About Christmas, about the lies, about everything. My mother immediately became defensive. I don't know what your father has been telling you, but we did what we thought was best for everyone. Megan was going through a difficult time with Paul and the girls. The girls who aren't actually his daughters, I pointed out. The situation I supposedly judged, despite knowing nothing about it. You've always been judgmental of your sister's choices, she countered. Mom, Dad interjected, his voice firmer than I had ever heard him speak to her. That's not true, and you know it. We excluded Runa based on stories that weren't accurate, and we owe her an apology. My mother's shock at his intervention was evident. For perhaps the first time in their marriage, he wasn't playing the peacekeeper at my expense. The conversation that followed was difficult and painful. My mother alternated between defensive anger and tearful justification. I remained calm, stating facts rather than accusations. Dad supported me consistently, validating my experiences rather than minimizing them. By the end of the weekend, we had reached an uneasy truce. My mother had acknowledged, if not fully accepted, her role in the family dysfunction. We established new boundaries, including a requirement for direct communication rather than allowing Megan to speak for me or about me. The conversation with my sister happened over video call a week later, with similar mixed results. Megan oscillated between tearful apologies and defensive accusations, unable to fully accept responsibility for her role in the deception. I just wanted a perfect Christmas with Paul and the girls, she explained, and you're always so perfect, so judgy about my life choices. I've never judged your choices, I corrected. I've only ever wanted you to be happy. But I won't accept being lied about or excluded based on false narratives. We ended the call with no real resolution, but with a clearer understanding of each other's positions. Some relationships, I was learning, couldn't be fully healed, only managed with appropriate boundaries. The months that followed brought gradual changes. Dad and I spoke weekly, our conversations more honest and substantive than ever before. He began standing up to my mother in small ways, establishing his own identity apart from her narratives. My relationship with my mother remained strained but civil. We found neutral topics to discuss, and I accepted that the warm maternal relationship I had always craved might never materialize. It was a difficult reality to accept, but there was freedom in that acceptance. Megan and I maintained limited contact, interacting primarily through a group family text. Paul eventually moved on to another relationship, taking his performative fatherhood with him. The illusory family unit that had been prioritized over my inclusion fell apart within months. As for me, I began building my own traditions and community. I hosted dinner parties for friends, volunteered regularly at the shelter where I had spent the previous Christmas, and even started dating someone who valued straightforward communication above all else. When the following December approached, I made a bold decision. I invited my parents to spend Christmas at my condo in Seattle. To my surprise, they accepted. Dad arrived first, driving his truck that had become a symbol of our new relationship. He helped me decorate a small tree, hanging the few ornaments I had saved from childhood alongside new ones I had collected. My mother arrived the next day, bringing her famous cranberry sauce, but otherwise allowing me to host on my terms. It wasn't perfect, not the warm family Christmas of television specials, but it was honest. No one pretended feelings that weren't there. No one maintained facades of perfection. On Christmas morning, Dad parked his truck at the viewpoint overlooking the city, and we took a family photo with the Seattle skyline behind us. In it, I stood tall and centered, no longer the outsider trying to earn my place. The experience taught me that healing doesn't always mean returning to what was broken. Sometimes it means building something entirely new from the salvageable pieces. Christmas dinner was quiet, but peaceful. We shared stories, carefully avoiding the landmines that had exploded our family dynamic the year before. My mother complimented the meal I had prepared, and Dad talked about the projects he planned to tackle with his truck in the coming year. As evening approached and my parents prepared to leave, my mother surprised me. "Next year," she said hesitantly, "maybe we could spend a few more days here, if you'd like that." It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was an acknowledgement that our new dynamic might have value. "I'd like that," I replied. After they left, I sat in my living room surrounded by the remnants of our modest celebration. The string lights cast a warm glow over gift wrapping and empty plates. For the first time in years, Christmas felt like it belonged to me too. I called Sophia to share how the day had gone. "It sounds like progress," she said. "Not perfect, but real progress." "It was honest," I agreed. "That's more than we've had in years." The truck had served its purpose, not as the grand gesture of revenge I had initially envisioned, but as a catalyst for conversations that were decades overdue. It represented my father's willingness to accept love without the complicated strings that had always been attached to family affection. The journey of healing family wounds is rarely linear or complete. Some breaks can be repaired, leaving visible seams but restored functionality. Others can only be acknowledged, accepted as part of the complex tapestry of relationship. What I learned through this painful experience was that real family is not defined by obligation or shared DNA, but by respect, honesty, and mutual care. Sometimes the healthiest love we can offer is the courage to establish boundaries, to demand truth, to refuse to participate in comfortable lies. The relationship with my father strengthened considerably over the following months.
We developed our own traditions, including monthly dinners where we could talk without the influence of family politics. He began sharing stories from his own childhood, helping me understand the patterns that had shaped our family dynamic. My mother remained more challenging. She struggled to accept that her version of family harmony had actually been built on the systematic exclusion of one of her children. Progress was slow and often frustrated by backslides into old behaviors, but there were moments of genuine connection. Megan and I found a way to coexist that acknowledged our fundamental differences. We would never be close in the way sisters are supposed to be, but we could be civil, even caring, within appropriate boundaries. She eventually admitted that she had embellished stories about my supposed judgments because she felt threatened by my success. Paul disappeared from our family narrative as quickly as he had appeared. His relationship with the two girls he had claimed as daughters ended when their mother finally obtained a restraining order against him for his inappropriate social media posts. Megan was devastated by the relationship's end, but it opened her eyes to the deceptions she had been willing to support. The experience taught me valuable lessons about the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. I could forgive my family for their betrayal without pretending that our relationships could return to their previous state. Forgiveness was something I could give freely for my own peace of mind. Trust, however, would need to be rebuilt through consistent actions over time. I also learned that my success wasn't something to apologize for or minimize to make others comfortable. The family dynamic that had positioned me as the outsider was partially maintained by my own willingness to downplay my achievements and needs to keep peace. That Christmas marked a turning point, not just in my family relationships, but in my understanding of my own worth. I stopped seeking validation from people who had consistently withheld it and began building a chosen family of friends and colleagues who appreciated me as I was. The truck became more than a vehicle for my father. It became a symbol of possibility, of dreams that didn't have to remain forever deferred. He used it not just for practical purposes, but for small adventures, weekend trips to places he had always wanted to see but never prioritized. 2 years later, when I received another major promotion, the family response was markedly different. My mother called to congratulate me directly. Megan sent a thoughtful card. Dad took me out to dinner to celebrate, driving us to a restaurant overlooking the Columbia River. The change wasn't dramatic or Hollywood perfect, but it was real. We had learned to relate to each other as adults rather than playing the roles we had been assigned in childhood. I don't know what future holidays will bring, whether the fragile new dynamics we've established will strengthen or fracture. What I do know is that I will never again accept less than I deserve in any relationship, family or otherwise. The story isn't one of perfect reconciliation or fairy tale endings. It's about the messier but more authentic process of establishing healthy boundaries, demanding honest communication, and building relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in dysfunction, even when that refusal temporarily makes things worse. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the catalyst others need to examine their own behavior. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members? How did you navigate that challenging process? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself can lead to healing, even when it feels impossible. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is demand the respect you deserve. Your worth isn't determined by others' ability to recognize it, and you have the power to build the life and relationships you truly want.